Boom. That's the sound I felt in my chest the moment I pulled up to my mom's pool party. Only it wasn't a real boom. It was my life detonating in slow motion. I'm Madison Carter, and if you'd asked me 5 minutes ago whether family could cut deeper than strangers, I would have laughed. But laughter died in my throat when I saw her, my mother, standing at the edge of the sparkling pool, a drink in hand, perfectly coiffed hair glinting in the sun. And then she saw me and my 2 kids, and that smirk curled across her lips, sharp enough to slice through confidence itself. "Oh, you're here," she said, loud enough for the small crowd of neighbors and friends to turn. Not a greeting, not an invitation, just a reminder that we didn't belong. I took a deep breath, pretending it didn't hurt, forcing my kids to smile, but the tension coiled around my stomach like a snake ready to strike, and I knew, right then, that this wasn't just another party. Something was about to snap. From the moment we stepped onto the manicured lawn, it was a parade of judgmental glances and whispered comments. "Oh, look at them," one woman said, her voice thin and sugary, dripping with condescension. My daughter, Ella, tugged my hand, her tiny face pinched with confusion. "Mom, why are they staring at us?" And my son, Liam, tried to hide behind me, shrinking like the world was suddenly too big. I swallowed my fury, refusing to let it spill out in front of them. I had spent years training myself to smile through her cruelty, to stand tall while she wielded humiliation like a weapon. But today, the stakes were higher. I could feel it in the air, a silent charge, as if the universe was holding its breath. And then she came closer, her tone sugary but venomous. "Madison, darling, this isn't really your scene, is it? Maybe you should just leave." Leave. The word hit me like a punch, but instead of crumbling, something ignited inside me. I realized she wasn't just rejecting me, she was trying to erase us, erase my kids' right to happiness. And that's when I decided I wouldn't just stand there. I would flip the script. But the question was, how? I scanned the crowd, seeing their shocked little smiles, their polite whispers. They were used to my mother's perfection, her social power, the way she curated every moment like a director on set. And here we were, 2 kids in tow, dressed modestly but vibrantly, every heartbeat a rebellion. "Mom," I said, my voice calm but laced with steel, "I think we'll stay." Her eyebrows shot up. She blinked as if I'd just spoken another language, one where respect and fear were flipped upside down. My kids clung to me tighter, sensing the shift. This wasn't about drama, not yet. It was about assertion, about staking our claim in a world that always tried to sideline us. And then she laughed. Not a friendly laugh, but a sharp, slicing sound that made my skin crawl. Cute. The word felt like ice down my spine, but it also lit a fire. She thought she owned the narrative. She thought she could humiliate us and walk away untouched. And just like that, I started plotting the reveal that would turn her world upside down. But it had to be perfect. Timing, presence, shock value. Every element had to land so hard it would be unforgettable. And the first step, keeping calm while hiding the storm. I led the kids to the fringe of the party, somewhere we could observe without being completely invisible. Ella whispered, "Mom, why does she hate us?" Her small voice, tremulous with fear, stabbed me harder than any insult my mother ever hurled. I knelt down, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "She doesn't hate us, baby. She's scared of us." The words surprised even me, but it was true. She'd always been threatened by strength she couldn't control, by success she didn't earn. And I knew, deep down, this humiliation, this public power play, was her desperate attempt to assert dominance. Liam, meanwhile, had already started picking up little snide comments from the surrounding adults. I could hear them, soft, insidious murmurs, meant to remind my kids we weren't welcome. And that's when my vision cleared. I realized I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to argue. I needed to reveal the truth that no one here expected. The question wasn't whether I could get revenge. The question was whether I could orchestrate it perfectly. And oh, I could. But first, I had to bait the trap. I took a deep breath, letting the pool's shimmering reflection play across my face. I had spent years working towards this, building my career, my savings, my independence. And yet, standing there, I felt a twinge of fear. This wasn't just about showing her up. It was about proving to my children that strength didn't always come from shouting or fighting. Sometimes it came from silence, patience, and timing. My mother, meanwhile, had begun hosting some kind of ridiculous game by the pool, calling attention to herself and her friends, oblivious to the tension coiling like a live wire just behind me. I smiled faintly, pretending to sip my drink, letting her underestimate me. Micro-cliffhangers were my specialty now. She thought she had the upper hand. She thought we would leave. But the storm I'd carried silently for years was about to make landfall, and I could feel it. The electricity of suspense hanging like a thundercloud right above the sparkling water. It was almost too delicious to contain. They nodded, too young to understand fully, yet sensing the gravity in my voice. Every step from here had to be precise. One wrong move, and my moment of revelation could slip away forever. But I had patience. And more importantly, I had the truth. The kind of truth that couldn't be spun or hidden. The kind of truth that would make her entire carefully constructed world crumble. The question, lingering in my mind, unspoken, was how she'd react when the shock hit. The sun dipped slightly, casting shadows across the pool, and suddenly my mother was gesturing to a server carrying hors d'oeuvres. She moved like she owned not just the party, but every single blade of grass, every ripple in the water. Her confidence, so familiar, made my stomach twist. I wanted to laugh, but I bit it back. I let her play the queen, thinking she ruled the world. But I knew better. My family had endured her reign of judgment for years. And this public moment was my chance to rewrite the story. Ella tugged at my dress again. "Mom, she's pointing at us." I followed her gaze and saw my mother, grinning cruelly, calling attention to our presence. Whispers and laughter spread among her friends, a chorus of condescension. And that's when it hit me. The perfect moment for the reveal. Not too early, not too late. Timing was everything. I let my heart hammer, let my pulse race, savoring the anticipation. No one here knew the truth, not a single soul. And as my mother's gaze locked on me, her smugness absolute, I felt the tiniest spark of euphoria. She had no idea how much power I had at my fingertips, and she never would until the right second. That second was almost here. I took a step closer to the pool, letting the reflection of sunlight bounce off the water and into my eyes, a metaphorical spotlight on the truth I was about to drop. My kids mirrored my composure, though their tiny hands clenched nervously. Every whisper around us felt like a wave crashing closer to revelation. My mother, oblivious, kept basking in her self-proclaimed glory, showing off the lavish decorations, the curated playlist, the people she thought elevated her. But there was one thing she couldn't control: reality. I had worked in silence for years, saving, investing, building, and now that quiet labor would speak louder than her laughter ever could. I let my gaze sweep the party, taking in the perfectly manicured lawns, the floating pool toys, the sparkling glasses. Everything looked idyllic, but beneath it, chaos was waiting. The cliffhanger was mine to wield. Every person here thought they knew the story. Every guest assumed I was just the underdog, the one humiliated. And soon they'd realize they were witnessing something else entirely. A reversal of power so shocking it would leave jaws dropping, hearts racing, and my mother completely unmoored. The moment was almost upon us. 6 months earlier, I had scoured every property listing, every rental agreement, every legal loophole. I had saved quietly, meticulously, under the radar, the way a chess master plans 10 moves ahead. No one knew, not even my closest friends. And now, standing at the edge of this ridiculous inflated pool party, I realized that secrecy was my greatest weapon. My mother had treated me like a shadow, a mistake, someone unworthy of attention or success. She thrived on the illusion that she controlled everything, and now I would dismantle that illusion piece by piece. I could see the tiny cracks in her posture, the way her smile faltered just slightly when she noticed I wasn't cowering. That subtle acknowledgement thrilled me. I had rehearsed the moment in my head so many times I could almost taste the satisfaction of every gasp, every whispered realization from the crowd. It wasn't cruelty, it was justice, and the kids would witness it, understand it, remember it. That was the ultimate payoff. And the best part? She had no idea it was coming. As the afternoon stretched, laughter and splashes echoed across the pool, but my mind was elsewhere, focused entirely on the crescendo of the reveal. My mother continued her display of dominance, unaware that her reign was about to end. I took a deep breath, feeling the heat of the sun and the tension in the air blend into something electric. Ella tugged my sleeve. "Mom, is it time?" I smiled faintly, reassuring her. "Almost." I let the anticipation build just enough to heighten the drama, and then I stepped forward, letting every eye on the party lock on me. My mother's grin faltered. Her words cut off, the realization dawning too late. I straightened, raised my chin, and let the moment stretch just long enough for every whisper to grow louder. And then I said it, the words that would reverse every single ounce of humiliation she had inflicted on me and my kids. The silence hit like a tidal wave, shocking in its intensity. Guests turned, murmuring, eyes widening, and for the first time, my mother looked truly small, stripped of her carefully crafted facade. I let the words hang in the air, watching the ripple of shock spread through the crowd. My mother's face shifted from disbelief to panic, her lips parting as if she wanted to argue, but no sound came out. I held the moment, letting everyone take in the truth. She wasn't the queen here. I owned the house. Every pool float, every glass of champagne, every meticulously placed chair belonged to me. And suddenly, the power dynamic that had ruled our lives for decades flipped in an instant. My kids stared, eyes wide, marveling at their mother's triumph. I felt a rush of vindication, but also a strange tenderness, knowing this was more than revenge. It was proof that strength, patience, and perseverance pay off. Guests murmured, some gasping audibly, while others whispered in disbelief, trying to reconcile the woman they knew with the one standing confidently in front of them. And in that moment, my mother faltered completely, as if the ground beneath her had vanished. Her voice finally returned, trembling. "Madison, how?" She stammered, the facade of superiority cracked, revealing a rare vulnerability. She tried to laugh it off, but it came out hollow, brittle. I shook my head slightly, savoring the tension. This wasn't about embarrassment, it was about acknowledgement, about forcing her to see the truth she had so desperately tried to ignore. I took a measured step forward, letting my presence dominate the space. My kids, holding my hands, mirrored my calm authority. Every whisper around us felt like a wave crashing closer to revelation. My mother, oblivious, kept basking in her self-proclaimed glory, showing off the lavish decorations, the curated playlist, the people she thought elevated her. But there was one thing she couldn't control: reality. And now, that quiet labor would speak louder than her laughter ever could.
I let my gaze sweep the party, taking in the perfectly manicured lawns, the floating pool toys, the sparkling glasses. Everything looked idyllic, but beneath it, chaos was waiting. The cliffhanger was mine to wield. Every person here thought they knew the story. Every guest assumed I was just the underdog, the one humiliated. And soon, they'd realize they were witnessing something else entirely. A reversal of power so shocking it would leave jaws dropping, hearts racing, and my mother completely unmoored. The moment was almost upon us. 6 months earlier, I had scoured every property listing, every rental agreement, every legal loophole. I had saved, quietly, meticulously, under the radar, the way a chess master plans 10 moves ahead. No one knew, not even my closest friends. And now, standing at the edge of this ridiculous, inflated pool party, I realized that secrecy was my greatest weapon. My mother had treated me like a shadow, a mistake, someone unworthy of attention or success. She thrived on the illusion that she controlled everything. And now, I would dismantle that illusion piece by piece. I could see the tiny cracks in her posture, the way her smile faltered just slightly when she noticed I wasn't cowering. That subtle acknowledgement thrilled me. I had rehearsed the moment in my head so many times I could almost taste the satisfaction of every gasp, every whispered realization from the crowd. It wasn't cruelty, it was justice. And the kids would witness it, understand it, remember it. That was the ultimate payoff. And the best part? She had no idea it was coming. As the afternoon stretched, laughter and splashes echoed across the pool, but my mind was elsewhere, focused entirely on the crescendo of the reveal. My mother continued her display of dominance, unaware that her reign was about to end. I took a deep breath, feeling the heat of the sun and the tension in the air blend into something electric. Ella tugged my sleeve. "Mom, is it time?" I smiled faintly, reassuring her. Almost. I let the anticipation build just enough to heighten the drama, and then I stepped forward, letting every eye on the party lock onto me. My mother's grin faltered. "Madison, what are you—" Her words cut off, the realization dawning too late. I straightened, raised my chin, and let the moment stretch just long enough for every whisper to grow louder. And then I said it. The words that would reverse every single ounce of humiliation she had inflicted on me and my kids. The silence hit like a tidal wave, shocking in its intensity. Guests turned, murmuring, eyes widening, and for the first time, my mother looked truly small, stripped of her carefully crafted facade. I let the words hang in the air, watching the ripple of shock spread through the crowd. My mother's face shifted from disbelief to panic, her lips parting as if she wanted to argue, but no sound came out. I held the moment, letting everyone take in the truth. She wasn't the queen here. I owned the house. Every pool float, every glass of champagne, every meticulously placed chair belonged to me. And suddenly, the power dynamic that had ruled our lives for decades flipped in an instant. My kids stared, eyes wide, marveling at their mother's triumph. I felt a rush of vindication, but also a strange tenderness, knowing this was more than revenge. It was proof that strength, patience, and perseverance paid off. Guests murmured, some gasping audibly, while others whispered in disbelief, trying to reconcile the woman they knew with the one standing confidently in front of them. And in that moment, my mother faltered completely, as if the ground beneath her had vanished. Her voice finally returned, trembling. "Madison, how?" she stammered. The facade of superiority cracked, revealing a rare vulnerability. She tried to laugh it off, but it came out hollow, brittle. I shook my head slightly, savoring the tension. This wasn't about embarrassment. It was about acknowledgement, about forcing her to see the truth she had tried so desperately to ignore. I took a measured step forward, letting my presence dominate the space. My kids, holding my hands, mirrored my calm authority. Every whisper, every sideways glance reinforced the power shift. I felt an intoxicating mix of pride and relief. For years, we'd endured her manipulation, her subtle cruelty, her constant attempts to make us feel small. And now, the narrative had been rewritten. But as I looked into my mother's eyes, I realized something deeper was at play. Her fear, her desperation, the tiny fissures of regret beginning to show. She tried to regain control, directing the conversation toward trivial party details, but no one listened. The revelation had stolen their attention, the dramatic pivot too compelling to ignore. I walked closer, feeling my pulse quicken, not with fear, but with power. My mother's friends glanced at one another, whispers and stunned looks passing between them like wildfire. I felt a twinge of satisfaction as I saw them recalibrate their perception. Madison Carter, the once dismissed daughter, was now the architect of this moment. My kids squeezed my hands tighter, sensing the gravity, and I whispered softly, "Stay calm, watch this unfold." It wasn't just a victory for me, it was a lesson for them. And then, just as I thought the tension had peaked, my mother made a move that surprised even me. She lunged, not physically, but with words, sharp and cutting, attempting to reclaim her dominance. "You think money makes you better?" Her voice trembled, more from rage than conviction. I met her gaze evenly, unwavering. "No, it's not money. It's truth and recognition. And you finally see it, even if you hate it." The words landed like stones, heavy and unyielding. Guests flinched, some wincing at the confrontation, while others leaned in, captivated by the moment. My mother's attempts to humiliate me had backfired spectacularly, her own insecurity now laid bare. My kids watched, wide-eyed, as the woman who had often belittled us struggled to find footing. And in that struggle, I realized something profound. Revenge wasn't about cruelty. It was about reclaiming dignity, about teaching lessons through action, not words. But the climax was coming, and the final blow would be unforgettable. I raised my hand, signaling calm, letting the dramatic silence settle like a weight. The pool shimmered behind me, reflecting not just sunlight, but the shift in energy. "I didn't come here to fight," I said, my voice steady, deliberate. "I came to show you what strength looks like, and maybe, just maybe, teach my kids that respect is earned, not demanded." A pause, then, and yes, I own this house. Gasps erupted, eyes widening, whispers swelling into murmurs of astonishment. My mother's jaw slackened, her usual retorts caught somewhere between pride and shock. I let the moment linger, allowing the weight of revelation to sink in. Every detail, every pause, every measured word had built toward this crescendo. And as I glanced at my children, their faces reflecting awe and pride, I knew the lesson had landed perfectly. But even as the crowd absorbed the news, I noticed the tiniest flicker of something else in my mother's eyes, an emotion that would complicate everything. It was regret, subtle, almost imperceptible, but undeniable. The realization that her years of judgment, manipulation, and control had created a rift that no amount of social grace could fix. I had always known this day would come, the reckoning that would force her to confront the consequences of her actions. And now it was here. The guests had mostly recovered from the initial shock, some whispering nervously to one another, others stealing glances at the once untouchable matriarch, now exposed. I felt the strange thrill of victory mixed with a twinge of sadness. Revenge could teach lessons, yes, but it could not erase the years lost, the moments my mother had stolen from us through her cruelty. My children, however, were learning something powerful. Their mother stood for them, even when it meant challenging someone who had always seemed untouchable. And I knew this moment would stay with them forever. My mother's lips trembled as she tried to speak, attempting to regain composure. "Madison, But the words faltered, lost amid the stunned silence. I shook my head gently, letting her struggle hang in the air. This wasn't about humiliation, it was about recognition, about authority reclaimed, dignity restored. And slowly, I began to see a subtle shift in her posture, a grudging acknowledgement that the dynamic had changed. I took a measured step back, letting the energy settle, watching as she processed the reality she had tried so hard to ignore. My kids, standing proudly beside me, absorbed every nuance, every unspoken lesson, and I felt it. The final moment, the crescendo of truth approaching. The party resumed awkwardly, laughter more subdued, conversations tinged with disbelief. I stood near the pool, my children at my side, surveying the scene like a conductor overseeing a carefully orchestrated symphony. My mother tried to reclaim normalcy, attempting jokes, gesturing to refreshments, but her efforts were hollow. I let her try, letting the crowd adjust to the revelation, letting tension simmer just beneath the surface. And then I spoke again, calm and deliberate. This isn't just about the house. It's about respect, about understanding the difference between control and influence, about teaching my kids that even when life humbles you, you can rise stronger than before. The words landed, heavier than any insult, more powerful than any confrontation. I could see the wheels turning in my mother's mind, the shift undeniable. Her friends, previously enchanted by her charm and poise, now watched cautiously, glancing between us, absorbing the reality. I felt the subtle satisfaction of dominance, tempered by the knowledge that humility was a hard-earned lesson. My mother finally met my gaze fully, and in that moment I saw a flicker of something I hadn't expected: shame. The acknowledgement that her actions, her arrogance, her need to belittle had consequences that reached far beyond herself. And for the first time, she wasn't laughing, she wasn't dismissive, she was quiet, contemplative, perhaps even reflective. My kids noticed it too, and I knew they understood. Strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's revealed in the quiet moments of justice. The sun began to dip, casting golden light across the pool, and the party slowly lost momentum, guests drifting to other conversations, some still whispering, some trying to ignore the tension. I stood tall, letting the moment breathe. Ella leaned into me, whispering, "Mom, that was amazing." Liam nodded, his small face serious, as if he understood the full weight of what had just happened. And I realized, as much as this was about revenge, it was also about education, about showing them that dignity and patience could outshine arrogance and cruelty. But even as I basked in the settled triumph, I knew the ultimate twist, the one that would seal the story forever, was still to come. As twilight crept over the beach house, the air shifted. My mother, still reeling from the reveal, tried to regain her composure, but the confidence that had once radiated from her like a sunbeam was now replaced with tension. I could see her calculating, trying to figure out if this was a mistake she could erase or a reality she had no control over. Guests lingered, whispering behind hands, some captivated, some cautious. My children clung to me, their trust absolute. And then I smiled, letting my presence radiate authority. "Mom," I said softly, "it's time you truly see me. Not the girl you tried to shame, but the woman who built everything we have from nothing." Her eyes widened, and I could see recognition flicker in them, a mixture of awe, fear, and something deeper. The micro-cliffhanger hung in the air taut, as if the world itself paused for her response. She opened her mouth, then closed it, words failing her as the weight of decades pressed down. I realized she was struggling not just with me, but with herself. Years of judgment, belittlement, and obsession with appearances had built walls she didn't know how to scale. I let the silence stretch, each heartbeat deliberate. My kids watched, absorbing every lesson in patience, poise, and strength. And just when I thought the tension couldn't rise any higher, I dropped the next revelation. "By the way," I said, my voice steady, "this isn't just a rental. I've owned this property for over a year. You've been hosting parties in my house without ever knowing it." The crowd gasped, her face turned pale, jaw slack, hands trembling. It wasn't just embarrassment. It was a complete dismantling of her perceived power. The murmurs grew louder, whispers bouncing off the walls and echoing across the pool. My mother's friends tried to process the truth, eyes darting from her to me. I let my calm sink into the chaos, letting every person feel the reversal. Her facade cracked further. She opened her mouth again, trying to assert control, but no words came. Instead, a low, defeated sigh escaped her, and the air thickened with unspoken understanding. The era of dominance was over. My children's eyes shone with admiration, and I felt a fierce pride, knowing I had transformed humiliation into empowerment. And then, just as the moment reached its peak, I noticed something subtle, a tiny smirk forming on my mother's lips, hinting at a recognition she hadn't expected, that perhaps, despite everything, she had underestimated me all along. The sun dipped lower, turning the pool to molten gold. My mother slowly straightened, brushing invisible dust off her reputation, but the shimmer of dominance she had once worn so effortlessly was gone. I took a step closer, voice calm, measured. "Mom, this isn't about revenge anymore. It's about understanding consequences, respect, and legacy." She blinked, nodding slowly, as if digesting the finality of the lesson. My kids, still holding my hands, absorbed the moment like sponges, internalizing the balance of strength and compassion. And in that brief pause, a fleeting micro-cliffhanger lingered. What would happen next in the new dynamic we had forged? Guests began drifting, some lingering to congratulate me quietly, others lost in whispers about the dramatic shift they had just witnessed. I let the tension breathe, knowing the aftermath would settle slowly. My mother remained near the pool, her expression a complex mix of pride, shame, and begrudging admiration. She finally spoke, voice low, almost hesitant. "Madison, you've really grown." And in that moment, the twist became clear. Victory wasn't only about power, it was about reclaiming respect, not humiliating her completely. My kids smiled knowingly, understanding that strength could be gentle yet firm, that triumph could be silent, yet devastatingly effective. And the micro-cliffhanger, it was the subtle promise that life would never return to the old dynamic. I walked toward my children, wrapping my arms around them, feeling the warmth of their small bodies against mine. The beach house shimmered under the last rays of sun, a symbol of what we had built, not just materially, but emotionally. My mother's eyes followed us, tentative, reflective, as if calculating her next move in this new reality. I didn't flinch. This was not about fear, but about assertion, about teaching my children lessons that money could never buy: patience, courage, and the art of strategic revelation. And as we stood together, a micro-cliffhanger remained. What would she do with this newfound understanding? Dinner began to wind down, guests lingering reluctantly, and I noticed my mother attempting small, awkward gestures toward reconciliation. Her usual swagger was gone, replaced by quiet observation. I let her find her footing, knowing that the real lesson had been delivered, the truth now undeniable. My kids whispered excitedly about what happened, their innocence blending with newfound understanding. And while the drama had reached its climax, subtle threads remained: tension, reflection, and the unspoken acknowledgement that nothing would ever be the same. The twist had fully landed, yet its aftershocks would ripple for years to come. Night settled over the beach house, lights twinkling against the pool, casting reflections of victory, tension, and resolution. My mother finally approached, voice soft, almost hesitant. "Madison, I didn't see it coming." I smiled, letting the calm confidence radiate from me. "Sometimes, Mom, the truth takes time to be understood." Her nod was slight, almost imperceptible, but it held meaning. The micro-cliffhanger remained as a promise that growth, reconciliation, and understanding would take effort, but that the first step had been made. The kids yawned, exhausted but exhilarated, and I carried them toward the house, feeling the weight of triumph and relief settle together. My mother watched silently, a quiet witness to the transformation she had inadvertently catalyzed. I glanced back, letting the moment linger, a cinematic pause in our lives where past wounds met present victories. And then, as we disappeared inside, I knew this day would become legend in our family lore, a story of patience, strategic power, and poetic justice. Finally, I tucked my children into bed, their small faces serene after the storm of the day. I sat by the window, watching the pool shimmer under moonlight, and whispered to myself, "We endured.
We prevailed, and no one can ever take this moment from us. The day was ours, not through vengeance alone, but through strength, planning, and quiet revelation. And somewhere, I imagined my mother staring at the house, finally comprehending the power she had underestimated, her realization both humbling and inevitable. The story was complete, but its echoes would linger, shaping every future encounter, every silent victory, and every lesson taught without a single harsh word. We weren't just survivors, we were architects of our own justice. And for the first time, I realized some victories are sweeter when witnessed by those you love most.